Many thanks for staying with us and welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. It's time now to review headlines on today's newspapers. Steve, what do we got?
Yes, we go first, as always, with This Day on Saturday, quite loaded. The lead story, expectedly, Tinubu unveils Manifesto, vows to end petrol subsidy, FX crisis. The riders say promises security, prosperity, greatness. President says it will be in forefront of campaigns. APC will hand over to another APC government in 2023. Aisha Buhari declares. If we pick it from the rear, it looks to me like the wife of the president is very much interested in politics. She
sounds as though she is.
She heads the women committee, I believe, the National Women Committee for the party. About the first time that you will have wife of the president playing such a role, in this manner, and can be quite outspoken. You saw a video, trying to sing your song. That's your weekly song.
My new song.
Your new song, and then we've seen her apologizing on behalf of her husband, basically trying to say that, yes, the understanding will be that we under-delivered or whatever might have gone wrong. Please show some understanding. So she's always out there. And if you recall what she did almost all through the first term, she was at, loggerheads with the so-called cabal, within the thing, always making her voices heard, always speaking out.
Vocal, yes.
Very vocal, very vocal. So saying that APC will hand over to another APC government from my husband to Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who, as people, who know what's going on, will say she has been one of the key backers of the Asiwaju candidacy. So this is a good thing for the Asiwaju camp. And for those who support that cause, they will say that, yes, this is what we would like to happen. But, specifically about the manifesto, we discussed it already. This is an important document. Yes, people will tear it, and the opposition will study it and tear it apart and engage with it, interrogate it, etc. But like I said, an 80-page document, sparing no detail, touching on almost everything that a nation would need to develop. I think it's a good job. It's implementation that will be key. Because there are so many specifics in the document, you have armed people in case, if and when you become the president as Asiwaju, to remind you of what you promised. You remember that at the time, people were saying that, all these things that you are saying that Buhari promised, he never uttered those things, that people, different support cells were the ones saying naira would be 1 to $1 and all those things. The party denied all those things. But once you have a manifesto, this is the document. Every of the huge numbers of the campaign spokespersons that will be going out between now and the elections in February, this is what they will be speaking to. There won't be any excuse anymore to say that, Asiwaju means well for Nigeria, this is what you do. No, is now being specific. So this is what people will speak to on education, on health, on anti-corruption, on subsidy, economy, on security and effects. And the key things that This Day, as I highlighted here, and I commend the editor for that, the petrol subsidy and the FX crisis. Yes. If any president, any Nigerian president succeeds in fixing those two, you will see a major turnaround in the fortunes of Nigeria. Forget about all the nebulous infrastructure that we do not even know how much we have borrowed from China to fix, and we, and the trains are in many areas still problematic. These are the key things.
Right, but talking about borrowing, which what we almost touched on earlier as well, there's a very weighty statement that he made in there as well, in regards to say, borrowing is not, there's nothing strange about borrowing. At a time where Nigerians are quite concerned about where we are debt-wise, does this indicate that we are going to see even more borrowing in a new dispensation should he come into power?
I don't know about more borrowings, but of course, whoever is coming next cannot avoid borrowing.
Yes.
But then while you are borrowing, if the economy grows and you're smart with how you are running the economy, you'll be defraying, you'll be, settling all the yes, yeah, the debt on ground while you're borrowing. Because there's no way that any government can deliver without borrowing.
True.
You are not going to be waiting for IGR and waiting for levies and waiting for taxes to come in before you do things. And borrowings have a weight to it. What's the ratio to GDP? How solid is your sinking funds? Can Nigeria afford it? If you are not overboard as to what the books allow, that's no big deal, really.
Yeah, but we have to look at our debt profile.
Oh, yes. I mean, clearly, the Buhari administration has done more borrowings than any other government. The key thing will be, if you're borrowing for recurrent expenditure, if you're borrowing to pay salaries, that will be bad. That will be a very bad signal. And we'll be thinking Zimbabwe, thinking Sri Lanka, thinking Venezuela, thinking which other countries, if that, should happen. But Ashwaju is an accountant. He's done a few things in Lagos that are memorable. His running mate is a banker. He understands finance. I would imagine that it will be far more tighter if he wins than what we currently have. What we have now seems to be bedeviled by the so-called body language of the president, who will appear that he's hardly ever there in detail. So if Ashwaju says that there's no big deal about borrowing, he's saying that as an accountant who knows how to balance the books, and you will borrow. There's no avoiding it. What would be bad is when you have 10 trillion, almost 8 to 10 trillion budget deficit, almost all, by borrowings, in a 20 trillion naira budget. No, that won't be smart economics.
Not in any way.
Absolutely. And people, will draw his attention to it. On top of that, another important story, floods. King Charles III writes Buhari, expresses sadness, says UK stands in solidarity with Nigeria. UNICEF, 2.5 million Nigerian flood victims need assistance. This is a good one from King Charles, just like the viral video from the ambassador of the US to Nigeria saying that, United States stands with Nigeria in these very trying times. And these are trying times. This is not a small matter, like we said earlier. The floods are major. They speak to a major human disaster, and not just now, but the kind of humanitarian disaster that may happen after that. You see what is happening in Bielsa, yep, in which dead bodies are being washed out, the kind of diseases that we may have to deal with after. So it is key that at least our friends in the West, the US, the UK, are saying that we stand with you. Every assistance that they can give, Nigeria needs at this point, beyond the tongue-in-cheek, thing that Australia is saying, that warning their citizens not to go to Nigeria because of flooding. I say flooding and all of the natural disasters don't happen elsewhere. What will be needed, however, will be for the Nigerian government to stand up and be counted, to stand up for the people who are going through a lot at this time. 33 to 34 states of the Federation out of 36, including the Federal Capital Territory, is affected. That is huge. Yes. That is probably unprecedented. And we can't just keep quiet, fold our hands
and just watch.
And assume, like, the water resources, minister is saying that, it's an act of God, it's rain, blah, blah, blah. That is not a smart ministerial thing to say. This is worrying, is very concerning, and people are apprehensive.
Yes.
On top of the masthead, Jonathan, Lawan, 42 others get excellence awards in public service. That's on page 14 of This Day newspaper. I think it's also it's actually the lead in many of the papers. If you look at The Guardian, for example, the picture, the cover picture is that of that award Governor. With Governor Wike. And I think it's also the picture on the cover of This Day too, Reward for Excellence. President Muhammadu Buhari presenting Distinguished Award for Industrial Revolution to Ogun State Governor Prince Dakwa Abiodun during the Made in Nigerian Excellence in Public Service Award at the Presidential Villa yesterday. It's the maiden edition. I'm not so sure, Abi, if I'm a big fan of this type of award.
There have been quite a number of them being dished out over the last couple of months, I
we
must
just
say.
had a national, honors awards. If you can fit in there, what honor are we giving to governors who are elected to do their job? Who determines a governor that has performed? Is it the president? Is it the people around the president? How has the president himself performed?
Yeah.
Does the president not deserve an award? Was he given an award? When civil servants come together and say, "Oh,
who make these decisions?"
These decisions, let's honor people. Honor to whom honor is due. What honor are we talking about? That's the job you are paid to do, and for which you'll be heavily rewarded by way of pension when you leave. I'm not so sure if what informed this award, this very first edition. I'm not sure if the incoming government, except of course it's a government of the APC, will retain this kind of award. How many awards are we going to have in the country that is struggling, to live up to its billing? You're dashing awards to sitting governors.
What are the metrics of
governors
these
who
awards?
are borrowing, to perform basic, needs, basic duties for their states. I'm not so sure.
It's quite, we're laughing about it and making a joke or light, but this is a very weighty issue because it's suggesting that, look, for me, accountability first.
Yeah.
What are the metrics? How do you qualify for it?
Absolutely.
And a very important question you asked earlier, who are those who are actually, I am the people.
Yeah.
I am the one who should be saying, look, this is the governor who deserves this.
Exactly.
If at all, I should be rewarding a governor for doing his job.
It's for his job. You're rewarding governors at a time when 34 states are battling with flood.
Ravaging.
Didn't they know that there will be flood? Didn't they know that? How well have they performed? People talk about how they contained COVID-19. How did you contain COVID-19? Did you stop people from dying? Did you provided places where people can? That's your job. How does that become such a major achievement? So we don't know we don't even know how many of them got such a award. Is it just a jamboree that you just want to have a handshake with the president?
Yeah, it's an open sesame. It's quite worrying, and hopefully the wrong signals. I mean, it's a little too late to say the wrong signals are not being sent. But
it's been sent already.
Yeah,
but,
it's been sent.
Those are the things that we have to deal with. My major worry is that, where did they pick this idea from? I don't know. If it's an African thing, is that the sort of a thing that we learn from our brothers from Africa? Or this is just, some civil servant somewhere, pushing an idea and say, let's give people awards. What's that? All right, on the window, I beg your pardon, sorry about that. Emefiele to mark first anniversary of e-Naira with review workshop aims to drive further adoption through public engagement. That's a story on page 5 of this day. And last but not the least, David Mark's son dies in London hospital, battling cancer. That's on page 6. I think that's the first son of the former president of the Senate, General David Mark. Condolences to him. That's a sad thing. I think that is cancer related from the reports in the media. But it's such a shame that things like that we are still apparently unable to deal with them in Nigeria, and we have to bring the young man back to Nigeria. So our condolences to General David Mark. Can we go to another paper? Will that be The Guardian, or we prefer another one?
Look at The Guardian. We've got the Startup Act. Experts list gains, warns against pitfalls. Of course, this has just literally been signed into law by the President, Muhammadu Buhari. Of course, we mentioned this cover image where we have River State Governor Nyesom Wike, of course, receiving another distinguished award
for infrastructure.
Delivery from the President during the maiden edition of the Excellence Awards in Public Service.
The way we use the word infrastructure in Nigeria, isn't it funny?
It's
when you construct
the word doesn't have a meaning anymore. There's a Nigerian meaning. There's a Nigerian meaning for infrastructure.
He has concentrated on infrastructure.
You just launch a tap. It's an infrastructure project. But here we are. All right, we have Supreme Court affirms Oberev Wari as PDP Guber candidate. Nnamdi Kanu, council urges U.S. to sanction Buhari, Malami. And we've just mentioned David Mark loses eldest son, Tunde, to cancer. Our condolences to the family there.
I think the Supreme Court story there is an important one in Delta State. Sheriff Eberewori is the candidate of the ruling PDP in Delta State, and his challenger, is David Edevie. But what you see here is not just the fact that the Supreme Court has made, a judgment on who should be the candidates of the party. The undercurrent there is the fact that this is a battle between a godfather and a godson who's also trying to be a godfather. David Edevie, as we know, is being supported by former governor of Delta State, James Ibori, while Eberewori, who is the current speaker of the House of Assembly of Delta State, is a choice candidate of the current governor and who is the running mate to Atiku Abubakar, Dr. Ifeanyi Okowa. So it will look like Dr. Okowa, the sitting governor, and a potential vice president has succeeded in picking his successor for Delta State. Since 1999, or shall we say since 2007, when James Ibori finished, the situation has been similar to that of Lagos, that, it is said and it is known in that area that whoever will become governor will be picked by James Ibori. So much so that even when he was in jail in the UK, he determined, who should become what in the state. It looks to me like there may be an end or a temporary setback to such humongous power that he wields in the politics of Delta State, with Okowa, succeeding in picking Eberewori. And I like the fact that David Edevie has now congratulated him. He says, yes, we do not agree with that judgment, but in the interest of the party, we are congratulating you so that you can go out there and defeat, the major candidate, the major, opposition, which is the APC. And guess who is coming? Who is the candidate of the APC? Is Omoagege, the current speaker, deputy speaker, of the House of Reps. So it will be a tough battle between Omoagege and the sitting speaker of the Assembly. So
it's an interesting backdrop to it.
Sorry?
A very interesting backdrop to it.
Absolutely. But I mean, Supreme Court has decided now, so we know who the candidate is, and they will be proceeding with that. Any other story in the Guardian?
Of course, we can touch on the Startup Act, which of course has just been, signed into law. Of course, this is probably going to, hopefully change the investment climate for Nigerian startups, especially in the technological field, fintechs and all that. So interesting move there. We just of course have to see
it's
how
an
this pans
important
out.
bill, and the president, and the government should be commended for that. It's something that people should also tap into, because it looks to me like a lot of people are not aware. I was having two evenings ago, I was having a discussion with a gentleman who so much believes, in this bill, and he says that this would bring a lot of changes,
a lot of impetus.
So I like the fact that things like that are happening, but then if it's not really like out there in the public, again, it speaks to the fact that so many, and I think Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu also referred to it speaks to the fact that there are some little gains, low-hanging fruits happening in this government, but that are not being trumpeted out there for people to really know and appreciate.
There is also the concern that it's happening barely 7 months to the end of this administration. That's another concern. But that being said, you know what? Would rather take it than not, right?
Government is a continuum.
At the end
so whoever is coming next after that should
continuum.
run with it.
Yes,
because
absolutely.
it's an important bill, with a lot of promises for the young ones. Sure. Let's go to the Punch, Saturday Punch. And the lead story, federal government budgets 13.8 billion for Basojo, Jonathan, IBB, Atiku, and others. Retired heads of service, permanent secretaries to get 10.5 billion naira.
What's
Huge pensions, those are pensions.
Okay.
Pensions that the federal government, is obliged to pay, except of course you change the law. The other rider says huge pensions for ex-leaders, insensitive, wasteful. That's according to some CSO and some economists. Federal government debt to hit 51.24 trillion naira over 8.4 trillion naira fresh loan. Debt at 51 trillion over 8.4 trillion fresh loan. We were just speaking about debts, you know, and the need, you know, to always run for loans and everything. This is what whoever is coming after Buhari will have to deal with. Let's hope that it will stop at this. Maybe we won't get to 52 or 53 or 55 before May 29 next year. Yeah. But this is the reality. This is what whoever is coming after Buhari will have to deal with. Fresh loans at 8.4 trillion naira. At this amount, this is bigger what this government will borrow this year to finance the budget of 2023 is bigger than the entire budget size of 2015 that Buhari government met when he assumed power. But things have you know, have since changed.
Shaking my head, of course,
these figures, head-spinning figures have been, you know. So that's our reality. There are a few other...
But what's your take on this pensions? Is it wasteful, as commented here by...
It's the law.
Yeah.
As presently constituted. If you want to... I mean, if push comes to shove, the areas where you have to reduce spending, we know them. Duplications of agencies in government, and maybe we do not even need 2 houses, you know, as lawmakers, you know, maybe 1, and we have examples of countries who have done that. The issue of pensions, for example, can be revisited. You know, if you don't scrap it totally, you can review it, you know, if push comes to shove. Otherwise, what it will come down to is that we'll be borrowing to give to these people, you know. We mentioned the case of Liz Truss the other time, £115,000 annually, you know, for a former prime minister. It's all over the world. You have to, you know, look after people who have had the privilege of running your affairs. Right. But then if it looks like the country cannot afford it, there's nothing cast in stone. Laws are made for men, and you can review such things. I'm not so sure if these figures are totally out of this world. If we were, I mean, for the biggest economy in Africa, but then the mere fact that we'll be borrowing almost half of, you know, what we need for the budget of 2023. That does not say much.
Right. I think a concern really would be, of course, at a time where, let's say, for instance, we didn't have Colonel Sabo. I don't know if we're still going to have him. With the security debarment allowance, for instance, for the Nigerian armed forces, the military, they've been clamoring for this for many years. They're entitled to it. Nothing has happened.
Absolutely.
But let's see if we have...
dealing with federal government, deal with other people too.
Absolutely,
you know,
yes.